So just like I often have a reminder to turn off your cell phones so that we don't have the ringers, I have also a reminder this morning about the question and answer period. So I don't know whether most of you know, but we have a website here, and on the website we have our rules that govern our question and answer time, so that we can everybody can have a fair opportunity to ask questions, and that we can have some civil discourse. So I encourage everybody to go to the website and review these guidelines. I will emphasize two that I found. One, questioners must not enter into a one-on-one dialogue with a speaker or with any other audience member. Questioners may not include the second part of a two-part question, nor pose a second question until other audience members have had a turn at asking questions and until invited by the speaker. Just we're trying to be fair, like I said, and promote civil discourse. So if you can take a look at those rules and follow them, it'd be much appreciated. Now, Ann.
Good morning, everyone. We are lucky today, and it's my pleasure to present Dr. Bren Kleinfelder. She is a fine arts photographer, a writer, an educator, and researcher. Her work has combined art, gender, culture, and scholarship. Dr. Kleinfelder earned her doctorate in educational methodology, policy, and leadership from the University of Oregon, and then spent almost 2 decades in the field of special education. Her focus on equity and arts-based learning during that time shaped her commitment to individual voice and choice. She was involved in numerous significant research and support projects for adolescents during that time. Dr. Kleinfelder began her long-term project that she's speaking about today for us, Women of Backbone, in 1998. She went to the remote southeast Alaska, and she sought to show how participatory art could empower the women there, challenge their societal norms, and affirm their self-agency. She later revisited and completed the project in 2024, culminating in the publication of Women of Backbone, Voices, Choices, and Photographs from an Island in Alaska, last year, 2025. This project is a collaborative photographic practice, and she is going to share her work with us this morning. Please join me in welcoming Bren.
Thank you so much. This is incredible to be here. I have to tell you, well, first off, I got to get on here. Wait a minute. Oh, can you not hear me? I'm so sorry. How's that? Is this better? Terrific. Thank you for letting me know. I'm very interactive, participatory, right? So you just jump in any old time. Oh, okay, wait, no. Thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. I want to let you know that this is my first gig. This is my first time talking about the Women of Backbone project in front of a live audience. And so it's a big deal before I hit the road, and we hit Chicago next, and it's a big thing happening there. We do have a book launch and an exhibition, and we have a panel discussion that is going to be part of the gallery and Chicago Art Expo, and I have 9 women from this project coming to sit on the panel. So it's going to be pretty exciting. I know. But anyway, this is my first gig, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited because I have waited 28 years to talk about this project. So I want to thank you all for showing up and supporting Willamette Art Institute, Willamette Institute, and I want to thank the Institute for allowing me to come and share my story, and other people too. It's really a wonderful program. Before I start, I want to give you an advisory and let you know, or just remind you that, in case you didn't know, that I'm going to be sharing a really good story. But it contains images of nudity, not in provocation, but in power. And the women in the work chose how and whether to be seen. Their bodies are presented with intention as acts of agency, resistance, and reclamation. I curated the presentation to be appropriate for a diverse audience the best I could. I also want to acknowledge that the Backbone Project honors the Linkit people, who are the original stewards of Southeast Alaska, and their ancestral place names of Sitka for Petersburg and Sikakwan, which refers to the region encompassing Mitkof and Kupreanof Islands. There we go. So the agenda, I expect that this will take about 40 minutes. And I'm going to start off by talking about place, because place is a big part of the story. It's almost like a character in the story. And then we'll talk about the origin, how in the heck did Women at Backbone even get started, and the participatory process that allowed me to take the photographs. And we'll look at some of the early images from 1998 and 2002, and then we'll look at images from my return in 2024. And I'm going to address the stewardship and ethics behind being a woman photographer photographing women unclothed outside against the stunning backdrop of Southeast Alaska. And then we'll close with a reflection, and then I'll follow up with a Q&A and open to ideas and conversation around that you might have about the project. So where the star is where Petersburg, Alaska is located. It's right in the center of the Inside Passage of Southeast Alaska, which is part of the Panhandle, the Alaska Panhandle. It's also part of, the Panhandle is actually made up of the Alexander Archipelago, which has over 1,000 islands. Yeah. Whoops, wait, the wrong way. There we go. There's Petersburg. That's it. I'm going to tell you a really big story that happened in that little tiny spot right there. Sitka, Petersburg, it's located at the tip of Mitkof Island, where the Wrangell Narrows meets the Frederick Sound. The Wrangell Narrows is that thin body of water right there. It's accessible only by plane or by boat. You see the landing strip there? And it's right in the middle of the Tongass National Rainforest, which is full of lush forests and abundant wildlife and marine life. For 20,000 years, the area provided essential fishing grounds and travel and trade routes for the indigenous Linkit people. In the 18th century, Russian fur traders established mink farms all around the region. Then in the 19th century, Norwegian settlers established a robust fishing industry, leveraging the strategic location to access glacial ice for fish processing. The fishing industry remains robust, and Petersburg actually has probably the wealthiest commercial fishing fleets in the whole state. The culture there is that well, if you've ever lived in a small town, you know about visibility, right? It's like you cross paths with the same people at least 5 times a day. Living in a small community it can be great, wonderful, but it also can shape how one is allowed to represent themselves. Gossip and rumor can be a serious issue if you step out of line or the local norm. Let's see. Sorry, I'm getting used to all this. Thank you for your patience. Here we go. And that leads me to the story. It began with this image. called Backbone. I photographed a prominent local woman, unclothed in the woods, and we were spotted by onlookers while photographing. The gossip that emerged was terrible. The collateral damage and scrutiny towards Adele, the woman in the photograph, and myself and our families made me so angry. So my instinct was to diffuse the gossip and social isolation that we were against by extending an invitation to all the women in the town to gather for a group nude. I mean, what's the town gonna do? On the day of the photo shoot, which was scheduled in April, there was a freak storm. There was gale winds, it was 32 degrees, it was raining, snow, and sleet, and white caps across the Wrangell Narrows. I need to say that the photo shoot was actually taken on the island opposite Petersburg, Mitkoff Island, and so at a home site. Ethel Bergman, 81-year-old woman who was the artist in town, and she was the mentor, and people were scared of her. And so when I when I talked to her about doing this photo shoot, I kind of cleared it with her and kind of got a little feedback from the wise woman in town. She goes, "Great idea, do it here, and I'll be in it." So 20 women gathered. 20 women crossed the Wrangell Narrows in the Case Storm and walked up the wiggling dock and carrying robes and plastic bags. And they showed up, not in spectacle, but in solidarity. From the beginning, the Women of Backbone series was organically rooted in participatory art. And there were 4 key aspects of participatory art that were specific to the Backbone project. The first one is co-creation over documentation. Each woman was invited to co-create the imagery, and this centered the women's voices in the artistic process. Choice and consent as creative acts, and this transformed consent into artistic collaboration and social commentary, elevating autonomy and trust. Narrative, inclusion, and voice. The women's narrative extended the work into cultural storytelling, which is, you'll read, we have a book that we just published, as you know, and so that's who tells the stories, the women. Art as activism and empowerment. The participatory art in this context became a tool for resistance, healing, and empowerment. The women were never subjects. They were collaborators from the first photo shoot on. And the way I would best describe it as a photographer is that the lines really blurred between me and the women when we were out there, outside, naked, in freezing cold. So after the town had heard about that first photo shoot of the 20 women all posing nude at Ethel Bergman's home site, the gossip diffused, and it turned into interest, and several women approached me and encouraged me to do another photo shoot because they weren't able to attend, or they didn't know about it, or they just thought it was really a terrific idea. So the project became a magnet for like-minded women in town searching for self-expression and also connection with other women. 6 photo shoots were conducted in 1998 and 2002 at various private home sites on Kupernoff and Mitkoff Island. So, whoops, here we go. So there were some photo agreements that happened in 1998 and 2002, and the first one was consent. And when the women, the very first photo shoot, when I asked for consent, they were like, "What? You know, you're going to show these?" And I said, well, yeah, well, that'd be great, and so we had a conversation about it. All of us were packed around the wood stove talking about it at Ethel Bergman's home site. And I said, hey, look, what if I don't show or exhibit in Alaska for 10 years? How about if we just wait? And that way, when you look back at your image 10 years from now, you're going to say, damn, I look good. And it happened. That truly happened. But in the meantime, I had exhibited some of the work in Chicago and New York and LA and, Boston and, Montana. I mean, I showed little snippets of the work, not the full body of work. The other thing that women had to agree to is that they would be willing to go outdoors. And because I shot with a 2 1/4 Hasselblad with Ilford film with a spot meter, everything was shot natural light. That's my jam. And so that was one of the deals. And not only were they outdoors, but they had to be unclothed. And so that means that they had to bring a robe. And also, we learned from that first photo shoot where it was freezing, that they needed to have rubber boots just from a safety standpoint. The ground was permafrost, and a lot of them lost cold really, really quickly. But luckily, we had a sauna running, and we also had a fire going in the house nearby. So this is the second photo I took. This is Ethel Bergman. And this is also my baby. I brought my baby, my 9-month-old baby, who's sitting right back there. Let me go to the shot here. There we go. It was a cultural moment, a lived experience, a lived context. And what we instinctively developed, because it was so cold, is that a culture of care that extended through the entire series, even through to 2024. And that culture of care came from just the women who showed up. When I was, just for example, I'll give you an example how it worked. So Ethel here is 81 years old. She has advanced diabetes. And the women that showed up, I couldn't believe the women that showed up. There were doctors, there were scientists, there were commercial fisherwomen, there were waitresses. I mean, people just looking for like-minded souls. And fortunately, we had several representatives from the medical industry who, one was a geriatric nurse, who went up and got Ethel out of her bed and put her in a full-length mink coat, wrapped her up in blankets, and put her in moccasins and walked her downstairs real carefully and slowly. We had the chair all set up. This is in her front yard. She was all wrapped up with blankets. There were like 3 women tending to her, waiting for me to get focused and get all my meter readings and things like that. And then the very last minute, Maddie was wrapped in a mink stole and sitting in the sauna with a bunch of women who brought her out. And so it was just like 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. It's like put Maddie in the lap and rip off Ethel's clothes. Her mink stole was thrown over the back of the chair. The mink stole was ripped off of Maddie's lap, and I just went click, wind, done, take her back. And so the women jumped in and then took them back. I took the image under 8 seconds, probably less. And it was so fast, 2 frames. I got this shot. So that's how the culture of care worked. And then the women wrapped up Maddie and whisked her back into the sauna. Ethel was wrapped up and taken upstairs, tucked into bed, and given a hot toddy. True story. There was a lot of pre-planning that went on in this, and so I would walk the sites ahead of time. I'd have my shot list all laid out. I'd know how many women I'd need for each shot. I'd make drawings. I mean, everything, just to make sure that I could keep it moving and move it fast so that everybody stays safe. That was number 1. So this was the second photo shoot, and one of the women in the center there is Ruth Sandvik, and she was 78 9, I want to say. She was Ethel's best friend. And she was the one that was really pissed off because she wasn't at the first photo shoot. And so she said, I can't believe you didn't invite me. And I said, hey, man, I blew it open to everybody, Ruth. And she goes, you got to do another one. And then other women said, yeah, you got to do another one. So I scheduled a second photo shoot at my home site on Kupernoff. And that second photo shoot really symbolized community. The women that showed up all had a vibe on what it was all about, and they wanted to connect. And so that feeling of culture of care was there, and safety. Safety was huge. And you know, for women, safety can actually feel like a luxury. We don't always have easy access to it. So when we have it, we lean in and we just flourish in it, and that's what happened in this series. We moved more boldly and pushed back on local social norms. And the freedom in solidarity was empowering. It felt joyful and fun. I remember after this second photo shoot, I was outside the entire time, and I think I had like 8 or 10 images all planned out, and I had mapped it out, so we made a big circle. I had a shot list, and you know, it comes back to the house, kept everybody close access to warmth and bathrooms. And so when all the women would gather, I had 30 women show up. And you have to understand, I was a homesteader with my ex-husband at the time, and so my husband was shuttling these women back and forth across the Wrangell Narrows, and we had to run our boat up onto a beach, and they had to climb out in their rubber boots and walk up Barnacle Beach and, you know, come inside with their robes and things like that. Well, when I walked back in after the photo shoot, I was out for over an hour. I walked into my house, and there was food everywhere, and there was wine, and there was whiskey, and I was just like, and they were having a great time, and it was really warm and cozy in there, and they had decided to have a potluck. And I had no idea that they were going to be doing that. I was so busy, so I walked into this great party. It was really cool, and so that just was the way things rolled from then on. Over time, I began to see some of the images, like this one, less as a portrait and more of an archetype of collective, embodied female presence. There were moments during the shoots when I felt an unusual awareness of place, just place, almost like as if the landscape itself was holding witness to what we were doing. And knowing that we were standing on Tlingit land where women have lived within a matrilineal culture for thousands of years, you know, I became intensely conscious that we may have been standing on the very same footprints of other women for thousands of years. Yeah. I can't explain it beyond that. Oops. Humor and subversion was a conceptual element in many of the images. And I always went over the shot list, like I said, before we even stepped outside. And so I asked for volunteers. And so I'd say, okay, we're doing this shot called Goats Who Smoke. And I need 2 women to tie goat antlers, you know, under their chin, so it's on top of their head, and you got to smoke a cigarette. Do I have any volunteers? Everybody wanted to do that shot. You know, I left it for them to hammer it out. But the shots like this, these things would draw so many volunteers. And God, we laughed so much. We laughed so hard sometimes it was hard for me to focus my camera. Vulnerability was at the foundation of every image. vulnerability and empowerment are closely aligned. It's similar to what Brené Brown talks about. It is exactly what her research represents. It's so true. You know, the empowerment, it extended beyond the photographs and into the lives of the women, which extended into the community. The conceptual symbolism in the images grew out of lived context. We were intentional about making space for real female form to exist without apology, without censorship, and without shame. We leaned into quiet power rather than confrontational power. In total, we made 67 really good photographs from 6 photo shoots in 1998 and 2002. And then we were done. In 2023, one of the women came to visit me in, oops, sorry, I'm getting messed up. There we go. Came to visit me here in Salem. They came to visit me at my little place, and she said, "Hey, whatever happened to those pictures we took?" And I said, "You know, I haven't looked at them in over 17 years. You know, I got divorced, I moved, I did a bunch of stuff. They've been stored in closets, under the bed, you know, in attics, basements, everything." And she goes, "Hey, can I see them?" So I said, "Okay." There you go. And that was this is the first image we turned over. And I remember saying, "What did we do?" And she said, "You don't know?" And yeah, I was like, you know, this work was incredible. I mean, as we were flipping them over, we're like, holy cow. And she goes, "You got to do something with this someday." And so I did. There we go. The work never felt done. It's the best way I could describe it. But I was approaching it in 2024 under a different political climate. There was division, the Roe decision, things like that, the digital visibility. In 1998, there was no social media. Perspectives around had changed for the women around aging, family, health concerns, you name it. And I didn't begin as a result of knowing all this stuff, walking into 2024. I didn't just start making photographs. I decided I needed to listen. Okay. So I interviewed the women, and these are some things that they said. "Personally, I feel more loving and prouder of all of us and filled with great admiration for what we did together. Things have changed a lot for everyone. We go through menopause, the slow drift of aging, and everything changes. Back then, it was essentially a body image thing. Now concerns are more about my ability to do something rather than how my body will look doing it." Another woman said, being an older woman and just seeing the way the world is, I thought women's empowerment was on the upward trajectory in 1998 and 2002. But it doesn't seem to have happened like that. And a young woman who joined in 2024 said, "To see what this photographic series has grown into and to see it become a Petersburg tradition is amazing. It's cool to be part of that tradition. It reminds me of a bugle call. The women are coming, the strongest army you'll ever have." And another woman in 2024 said, "I think there's a hopefulness in everyone in that you feel a little more empowered when you do something like this. Women don't realize that they're repressed because it's the norm. I think that when you're able to just symbolically shed clothing, it's a shedding of repression. And being able to feel empowered in who you are, loving who you want to love, or just being a woman in a world where you don't get to show your power or feel accepted by it. This is from a long-term participant. Returning to the series now in 2024 is very empowering. I would like to think, probably through my life experiences, that I'm more radical now than I was then. Now, at my age of 70, we're all immersed into this ageism thing where you have become invisible, where you're often ignored and cast out into the proverbial pasture. But I'm still here, and I have more to say. And the final word. This was a thread that went through the Backbone Project and gave agency for everybody to express themselves individually. It was powerful, and it was unique. Sorry. So, stewarding a project like this, the first thing I knew I needed to do in 2024 is that I needed to reconsent everybody. I needed everybody from 6 years ago, you got to get reconsented, because there was no way in hell I was going to tell women what they couldn't, that they were not going to have a choice. I wasn't going to tell them that they couldn't choose how they wanted to be represented in 2024. I wanted them to know that they also had a right to step away. And so I gave them the opportunity to alter their, step away completely, or just alter their images, take their face out, remove parts of their body, whatever they wanted to do. For me, the ethical thing to do was to consider their protection and their rights over the preservation of the photographs. The photographs are not sacred. Human life is, women's choices. So I also talked to a woman who said, hey, wouldn't it be cool, here we go, wouldn't it be cool if you self-published the book rather than going out to a publisher? And she said, that would be so cool, because then from the beginning of the project to the very end of publication, we will have been in complete control of this project. And so I thought about that, and I said, okay, let's do it. And we did, and it was really hard. And it was a lot of work, but it was really worth it. And one thing I did that came out of that is that I established with my daughter, Madeline, Summer Street Media. We have a little independent publishing company, and Women of Backbone is our first product that we just published in December. The other thing I did is that I copyrighted every single image with the Library of Congress, because that can give us at least a semblance of legal protection, especially on social media. I really, really did everything I possibly could to protect. I even had a lot of back and forth with Meta, who, because I have the website, who comes around and just decided that they were going to start scraping data to inform their new AI system. And I wrote to them, and we had a lot of back and forth going, and to say, hey, this is my First Amendment, these things are copyrighted. And they basically came back and said, well, in the state of Oregon, you guys do not have AI laws that protect you. And so we're going to do whatever we want, basically. I summarized that last part. So anyway, that was, yeah. So I did everything I possibly could. Oops, there we go. So in closing, I would say that this began as an act of solidarity between the women and myself on a small island. And over time, it became something so much larger. And as it continues, and it does continue, I should say, because the women chose to stand together. Totally choice. And when I returned in 2024, I realized that I needed to listen before I photographed. And the listening became a study, which I'm going to talk about in the next hour. Whoa. There we go. Thank you so much. It's just, I want to just point out that Backbone showed us that when women stand together with intention, culture shifts. And it doesn't come undone all that easily, if at all. Do you have any questions? Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I do.
I'll just let you, I won't be in control right now. I'll just let you.
Hi, I'm Neely. I just wanted to first thank you because it was amazing. I mean, the photographs are just breathtaking. The photographs are breathtaking. And you're an amazing artist, clearly. But I do have a question. Actually, I had three, but given the warning, I'm going to ask one at a time. So I'm going to ask one. What was the reaction of the males in town?
Yeah, that's a great...
to all this nudity and self-determination? Yeah,
I think that's a great question. When the first go around in 1998, when I did the first photo shoot, there were a lot of men that were like going, hey, you know, what about us, you know? I was like, man, I am not taking those images. You know, somebody else is like, this is a different ball game here. We're doing something completely different. But there was a lot of support. And I think the way that we moved, the other thing I would say about the stewardship is that we moved with excellence through the whole thing. We were integrity all the way. And so, because I knew that that would also keep us safe, right? And it really translated really well in town. And what was really interesting is when I came back in 2024 and I interviewed the women, one of the women told me that how it shifted the culture in town over time, slowly, but it shifted it. And she said that there was a woman who put on the Vagina Diaries, just like the year before our interview. And she said there were people that were going, I can't believe they're going to be, you know, oh, are you sure that's okay to do? And people going, yeah, do it. And she said it was remarkable because they had 4 showings and it was sold out, every single showing. And the guys who were on this commercial fishing, it was in the summer, so it was during commercial fishing season, the most lucrative commercial fishing fleet in all Alaska, they came in. They came in and they attended the showing of the Vagina Diaries. And she said at the end it was amazing. You would just see all these men standing up and applauding. It was just remarkable. And she said that was a direct connection and result of, she thought, of the Backbone Project. We just loosened it up. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh,
okay. Hi, this is Solveig. I may be wrong, but it seems that Alaska is particularly suited for that project because at least my impression is people up there are so fiercely independent and they don't care what anybody thinks. They live up there because they want nobody to bother them in terms of how they want to live or whatever. They're really strong. And I just think, could this happen in Jefferson, Oregon or whatever? I just don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it is definitely a pioneering spirit there. And the women are tough. And so, and well, everybody is, you gotta be. Honestly, we're naked outside, right? And we came up with that culture of care that just automatically, oh, we know what to do, because cold in Alaska is very dangerous, even with your clothes on, and so, I mean, that we were just like, yeah, we're gonna do it anyway, because we can, and we knew to bring food and, all that sort of stuff. So I think that we wondered, that question came up, it's like, could we have done it even in this time of division in the country, in that little town? That was a little red town in a big red state, and it remains that way. And so they wondered, back then we were able to pull it off, but we don't know that we could today. In that little town. And it was more risky doing it in a little town than it would be doing it in Jefferson County, where you could be anonymous here. You couldn't be anonymous there. And so that took a lot of courage, and it felt risky, but the solidarity and just made everybody feel really empowered to do it. And everybody needed a space and a place to connect and to also just express themselves, just be free in some new way. And living in such a tight little Lutheran community, which is beautiful, there's a lot of really great things to say about it. But yeah, did I answer your question completely? Okay, terrific.
Bren, I have a question. I'm Ann, over here. Bren.
Oh, yes, go for it.
I have a question about the process. You said that it was a participatory and that the women contributed to the process. Can you give us an example talking about one of the or more of the photos?
Yeah, I think if I go back to, I'm going to go back to this one, right? Oops, sorry. I guess I can't go back, right? Oh, yes, I can. Whoa, I'm so sorry. Whoops, this one right here. So the process went like this. I'm putting this one out because this is where we developed it. This is where it all stemmed. This is the epicenter of culture of care right here. And it just happened organically. It just happened naturally because they're tough. Women are tough, right? We're used to being, protecting ourselves from the elements and things like that. We're always in an open skip. I traveled in an open skip because I homesteaded with a baby on my back, and just had her all wrapped up and bundled up in my coat and things like that. You're just used to it. So what I ended up doing is just really nailing down how I was going to work in a fast way where the shots can happen really quick. Because remember, I'm shooting with film. It's terrible weather every time. It's just like would be pouring rain, I think we had one sunny day the whole time we did this series. But anyway, so I'd have my coat over my head and things like that, but I had to, and my camera would fog up and things like that. But I had to have it really laid out, all the shots of like where we're going to go. First we're going to go here, then we're going to go here, then we're going to go here, so that everything connected back to the house, where women could even change their mind and say, man, I changed my mind, I don't want to be part of it, or I'm cold, I'm leaving. That you could do that. And then I would, like I said, I would also lay out exactly what the content was going to be in the image, and I would have women select who was going to be in the shot. And so they could make that decision, and then also they knew when they were going to have to go step outside. And then I had a runner, somebody would stay with, or whoever got the last shot would run back in and say, okay, we're ready for the goats who smoke. And so then they would come out just as I was finishing up the last one, and it moved really, really fast. And they just kind of got used to it. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
It's so easy to go down a rabbit hole because this is a deep project. Yeah.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Neil, and thank you very much for this presentation.
Yeah.
I think it's hit the men in this audience as much as it's hit the women.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, you talked about going to Chicago, and I can see other presentations. Have the women asked that you give this presentation back in Petersburg?
Yeah, you know, we talked about that, and they know that it's available. I've gone back to Petersburg 4 times, and I've always, mostly for the study, but then I went back, and I always did a presentation, like on the findings from the study and things like that. And then I went, when I had the book kind of draft done, I went and I put that up on the wall, and then they walked through and they read it, and so they knew all the steps along the way, and then they could, you know, tell me how to make changes and things like that, or what was making them uncomfortable. And then at the very end, I had a paperback of the book made because I thought the women, the last set of eyes, it's gone through 2 copy editors, the last set of eyes has to be the women. And so I showed up at the Petersburg Public Library, and I'll talk more about this in the next presentation. I showed up at the Petersburg Public Library, and like 40 women all came in, and they all went through the book and caught typos and things like that. But it was all closed, and they wanted it closed. They were not ready for the Petersburg launch. They, you know, there were some people that were concerned, you know, and I think concerned about social media, concerned about grandkids, concerned about all kinds of things for good reason. And so I said, yeah, well, we don't need to do it here. But when you guys are ready, I'll come and do a book, you know, launch and a presentation anytime. And I just asked about probably a month ago, and I said, hey, is the library ready for a presentation? And they said, not yet.
I think it's amazing that you got second consent from everybody. I really appreciate that. I'm curious if any women did not give consent in the end, and what percentage that was.
That's a great question. I had, out of 47 women, I had 2 women had passed away, Ethel and Ruth, and then 2 women just said, no way, I want out of there. And so I was able to do that, and I'll show you in the next thing how I did. I did it digitally, and so and they were just like, I don't feel that way anymore. My views have changed. No way. Just, you know, out. And so I was really protective of it. I said, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you're done. You're out. So that's how I handled that. But reconsenting was a huge process, massive. It took me months because women were scattered all over the country, and I had to reconnect with all these women. And so I would do these cold calls in the evening after work. And by the end, somebody says, I was waiting for my cold call. Hey, how you been? You know, and then I did a couple of Zoom meetings too, because a lot of women had a lot of concerns, and I needed to field their questions. I needed to know what was going on, you know, in their lives. And so that's when I said, oh man, this is great. I can do a study, get more information. So it had multiple advantages.
Hi, my name is Dominic. I really appreciate what you presented here today.
Thank you.
And I know, you know, we're all getting older.
Yeah.
And the room's evident. And I think that our perception of beauty changes as we age. And I think that's so wrong. It should grow. It should be something that melds together. It's life. It's the changing of life. And thank you so much.
Bravo. You got my vote. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Joan.
Yeah, hi, Joan.
My eyes aren't working very well, and maybe if they worked better, I wouldn't have to ask this question. But are the women, is it a mixture of Native women and white women? Is it, because it seems like the cultures might be very different around nudity and things like that. So I just wondered about that.
Yeah, that's it. I'm so glad you asked that question. I had 2 women from who are Linkit who showed up for the photo shoots. It's a smaller population in Petersburg. It's mostly huge, white Norwegian, huge Norwegian descendants. Everybody stayed. And so generations of it. And so what was really interesting about that in the 2024 when Avery showed up, Avery Sakamoto is her name, and she's very much into her culture, and she said that she couldn't believe that how much the experience was like traditionally built to match a lot of the similarities of ceremony in the matriarchal society that she is aware of in her culture. And she was really moved from the 2024, and she participated in every single photo shoot. And she also did the map, and she also did all the, she talked to all the native elders in town to get the place names that we have on the map too. So they all know that, yeah, they're into it. So, I mean, there's no way I could tell a story without including the matriarchal Linkit society that, like I showed you in the one image. Go back to it. Go. Where you felt it. Like somehow it showed up in the images. It showed up in this image, and it showed up again, and in this one. We felt it in the moment, and then when we saw the image, we're like, whoa, I don't know. That's the only best way I can describe it.
Thank you. We are going to take our break now, and if everyone could come back at 11, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Cool. Here we are. Okay. Again, I want to welcome you all, and just a reminder that of the advisory that the images include nudity and that are not rooted in provocation but in agency, and the women chose how and whether to be seen. Their bodies are presented with intention as acts of voice, choice, and reclamation. I curated this presentation for appropriateness for a diverse audience. I hope. The Backbone Project honors Linkit people, original stewards of Southeast Alaska, and their ancestral place names, Sitka for Petersburg, and Sikokwan, referencing the region encompassing Mikhoff and Kupreanof Islands. The study will take me about 25 minutes or so to go through, so we have plenty of time for Q&A and discussions and things like that. Unless I go down a rabbit hole, but I can say those for Q&A, right? So we're going to start off talking about the research as listening, and we'll talk more about the study, how it worked, what emerged. We'll look at some altered image examples and how the research informed my return, and then I'll show you a little bit about how the study got formed into a book. Let's see, to recap. Is anybody here who wasn't there here in the last one? But just to recap, the Backbone Project began after I photographed a prominent local woman, unclothed, in the woods, and we were spotted by onlookers, sparking a wildfire of cruel gossip in a small town, which led to the inception of the Women of Backbone photographic series and 6 photo shoots in 1998 and 2002. The Women of Backbone series is rooted in participatory art through photographs, stories, and experience of women standing together that we created, and we created a series of images during that time. After a long pause, I returned to the series 26 years later and conducted 4 more photo shoots. There we go. So in 2024, I didn't begin, as I mentioned, by just jumping in and making photographs. I began by listening. 26 years had passed, the women's lives had changed, my own perspective had changed, the cultural landscape around visibility, privacy, self-representation, it was very different. I felt a responsibility, not just as an artist, but as someone accountable to the women and to the history that we shared, to slow down and ask new questions. I wanted to know what motivated these women to participate decades ago. That's actually a question I had for 26 years. And how have their lives, bodies, and perspectives shifted over time? And do they want their 1998, 2002 images to be represented in, or how, if and how they want to have those images represented in 2024? These questions became the research framework that guided the study. Oops, there we go. So in 2024, as I said, I began, no wait, hold it. Now we go, okay. Yeah, I realized that I was looking at 2 projects, past and present, which was very exciting to me as a researcher and also as an artist. By integrating art and scholarship, the study became part of the creative process, allowing women to revisit and reshape their original images in 2024. This deepened the cultural meaning of the work in a changing political landscape. Okay. Here we go. So I designed a very simple model. I'm queen of the very simple model. I love a simple model. It always has an elegance about it, right? And so I came up with this really simple model centered on what was already present in the original work, which was empowerment. I wanted to pull that empowerment piece across from the earlier the past to today, to the present, right? That was really important. And so the study bridged past and present by carrying forward the original commitment to voice, choice, and empowerment, ensuring that the 2024 return remained grounded in the ethos that shaped the work from the beginning. And I knew as a researcher and an educator in special education who specialized in adolescent behavior and mental health, that for kids to have agency, empowerment, they needed to have voice and choice. So I knew that that's how I could come at it. So by using voice as a qualitative piece and choice, how women altered their images, however, sort of, using a really simple method, I could get some quantitative data on privacy and other elements about that. I'll talk about it. But yes, it was very exciting when I made this connection. So this is how it worked. I returned to Petersburg in spring of 2025, and I brought 67 of the original past images, the best ones, all the good ones, and I laid them out in the Petersburg Public Library. And it was really amazing because what they did is they covered all the windows in rice paper to give the women extra privacy so people wouldn't know who were the women that were participating, because it was still a very sensitive topic in the town. Somebody asked me about that, and that was a great question. And so I had them laid out for 3 days and invited the women to walk among, reflect together, and physically mark the changes that they wanted, keeping representation in 2024 fully in their hands. And the way that we did that is Madeline was in the back, welcomed the women into the room. You can see her kind of down there on the bottom there. And she gave them a pencil, and she said, walk all the images, and you can mark them up, and here's the rules around it. Write you can write comments for my mom, or you can just scratch it out and she will represent it digitally, and that's the way it's going to work. We laid them out for 3 days, and for 3 days, women came from across the country that lived in Florida, they lived in Minnesota, they lived, in LA. Women had showed up for it, and they showed up not just to do that representation piece, but to be with the women, to regather. That solidarity piece really held through all these years. And the women who hardly knew each other, only knew each other from maybe passing in cars and steamed up windows and things like that in the past, became really close friends. And those remained, as we know, how the importance of it, into this time. So everybody showed up for it. It became like the gathering. We called it the gathering. And so women walked around for 3 days and visited. I want to also just say right here, in case I forget, that even after I left Petersburg, I left the self-representation choice open for another, 3 months, was it, Maddie? It was a while. I left it open for quite a while, right before I had to go to my final copy editor. And and they made choices 2 months later. They said, wait a minute, I had a second thought. Can you get me out of there? Or, yeah, go ahead, you can use it, but don't let this part show, and whatever. So I was making these little tiny tweaks all along the way. They needed to know that they were that they had a choice. They didn't have to be frightened and stay awake at night worrying about it, right? You got a choice. You don't have to. Take it out if you need to, no problem. So the women revisited, reflected, and reshaped their images, making the study itself part of the participatory process. Of the 43 women who agreed to reconsent, 17 participated in interviews, and all were invited to revisit their images. I also tracked changes in body coverage to understand evolving relationships to visibility and privacy. Oops, sorry. So what emerged from the data? The enduring impact. Many women describe that their participation as one of the most important experiences of their life. And, it remained this powerful story for them and impact for 26 years. Empowerment through self-representation, that original motivation to claim agency over how they're seen remained central. Revisiting the work reinforced that empowerment. This is big. Solidarity as strength. The collective experience, safety, humor, tenderness remained as deeply formative throughout the time period, and unity itself was transformative. Evolving identity. 88% of the images remained unchanged. 8 women chose intentional alterations, revealing growth, shifting priorities, and a redefinition of strength over time. Participatory art as a cultural force. The process democratized authorship and showed how participatory art can quietly shape lives and culture across decades. I was astonished at how important the work was to the women. I finally understood why they showed up. And it was astonishing also for me to think about how strength looks different as we age. The strength that they felt that they were showing in 1998 and 2024 at the age of 75 felt dangerous. And so the strength was in removing or making the change. It took a lot of strength for women to decide to change their image because they didn't want to ruin the image. They thought of it as being some sort of sacred thing. But the biggest thing was the solidarity piece. And that is that they all knew that they were together as a gang in the safety of numbers, and they were supporting each other, and that to pull themselves out was somehow could be considered not supportive. And it was not true at all. We were very, very proud of the women that were courageous enough and strong enough to say, no, I had changed my mind at this age. And so all this information from the study grounded my return in like a lived reality, mostly around how we age and what happens. So the research question was answered, not statistically, but experientially is the best way to put it. Oops. There we go. So this is an example, the women taking the pencil, scribbling out, letting me know, sending me a signal, don't want this. But one told me, said, I take my face out of it, but I am going to use it on my epitaph. And so I digitized it, and I just don't change my images, and so I'm not a Photoshop, expert in any way, shape, or form. So I thought, well, hey, I'm just going to do it the way I know how to do it, the best way I can do it, knowing that it was important that I still show and represent that change had been made. Because that's part of the art. That's where scholarship and research come into the actual photograph. How cool is that? And so I made sure it was done, but I also made sure that it was done in a way that it wouldn't, take away. It would just add to it. There were 6 slides that I'm going to show here of altered images that represent choice by the women and the digital interpretations. And as you can see, I created these final photographs that are used in the book. The participant-directed revisions show how the intersections of art and scholarship can work together. It was really cool. So they would leave me notes, scratch it out, and then I'd interpret it. For people who bought the book, this is the, look for the images in the book, right? And look for the alterations. But this is from the cat's cradle image, which is one of my favorites. And this woman said, what I want, she actually came to my house here in Salem. And she lives in Port Townsend. And she goes, I really need to physically be with you and talk about it. And so she wanted a grass skirt. This is the best I could do. Kind of shows that, I'm not great at it. Yeah. Here's one with oops, I'm sorry, I thought I switched it. Here's the one where a woman said, hell no, get me the hell out of there. And so I did. And also in the book, you'll see the very first photograph I took of the gathering of all the women gathered around Ethel Bergman and Madeline. I don't have that up because it's very frontal. It's the best way to describe it. But you'll see that I removed her from that image too. see, this is me. There we go. Yeah, in this case, one of the women, of the two women, chose not to remain in the project, and at a request, I digitally also removed her presence. Voice and choice include the right to step away, to say no thanks. And protecting that choice mattered more than preserving the original photograph. This is where the work really came fully into alignment for me. The study wasn't separate from the art. The research itself entered the photographs. So when I returned to Backbone in 2024, I came first as a listener. The research revealed the enduring impact of participatory art over time, which was actually a research gap that I filled. That empowerment through self-representation, solidarity, and self-expression had remained meaningful for more than 2 decades. The women were never subjects. They were collaborators, and through interviews, revisiting images, and renewed consent, they used their voices and choices to shape how they wished to be seen in the present. And new women joined in. Had 11 new women from town join in, enriching the legacy of the Backbone Project. My role as a woman behind the lens was to create a safe space for our collaboration and to carry forward the ethos of voice, choice, and empowerment to ensure the integrity of the women and the work. We stood in unity to create work of art that would be our legacy. It was a passion project based in participatory art that became a statement of feminist activism. Women of Backbone shows us that representation isn't something given to us, it's something that we claim for ourselves. Thank you for listening.
Hi again.
Oh, hi.
Hi. One of the people who bought the book.
Pardon?
Yes,
Yes,
one of
I
those people
remember.
who bought the book. Thank you again for the continued information. I was wondering whether, given the political climate that we're living in here today, and some of it affected, obviously, some of the choices the women in the study made, do you feel that there'll be more of a receptive audience for something like that? For a book like the book I just bought? Mm-hmm. Or there'll be pushback and resistance and not buying the book because we're in a very different climate?
Right. So one of the conscientious decisions that Maddie and I made for Summer Street Media and launching the book in ads on social media, because now that's how you advertise on books, is through on Instagram, right? And so we had a really good conversation about and keeping the women safe, because they are concerned for those very reasons that you just described. Yes, and the idea is nobody needs to feel fear. We don't want that. And so we decided that we were just going to advertise in Western Europe and Canada for now. So we're keeping it really low and just out of respect for kind of what's going down, you know, and how things are going. And certainly we don't want to cause any negative backlash for this work, which is really sensitive. And so I want to protect the women. That's the stewardship in me. You know, people say, hey, you can relax and whatever. It's like, I don't think so. Well, that may be true, but I'm not going to. Let's just put it that way.
So my name is Franca over here, to your left.
Okay, thank you,
Over here. So my question is a little bit broader, not specifically to your work of art, but it's also to other women in history who have posed nude for photographs within the photograph. And I'm thinking of women like Georgia O'Keeffe, who wanted to be portrayed. I think they cut off her head or something. But anyway, she wanted, so there must be other women. Have you studied that? Researched that? Other projects or other episodes of women wanting to be photographed that way?
I'm so glad you mentioned this. Yes, I was really inspired by Ruth Bernard's work, and she's a photographer, and also Imogene Cunningham did some beautiful female form images. And there's throughout time. But what was really interesting is when Adele and I, when she called me up, here's the story. Okay, so she calls me up out of the blue and said, hey, I want you to take a photograph of me. I saw that you took a picture of this woman friend of mine who was pregnant, who was naked. She goes, and I want you to do a nude photograph of me. And then she said, I'm having an affair, and I want to give it to my new boyfriend as a birthday present. I was like, what? She's head of the Lutheran Church. She's married to one of the esteemed Norwegian pioneer families, who's one of the big highliners and commercial fishing industry, all this stuff. She's just tied in. You know, if you stay in a small town long enough, you're related to everybody. So she's related to everybody. I was related to her by the time I left 13 years later. So, but when we went out to go take these, I didn't know what to do. I've never photographed a nude in my life. And so, other than my friends when they're pregnant. And so we go out there, and I had a sheet of tulle. I didn't know, what do you do? And we went out in the Forest Service roads, and we just went out into the woods, and we started taking, and we first started doing the male gaze stuff, you know, kind of like, and it was so stupid. We were laughing. We're like, these are terrible. This isn't us. And so it really wasn't until we were walking through the woods, and as we were walking through the woods, the sun had come out, and I saw the light and the shadows come down through the canopy and hit the forest floor. I said, Adele, hurry! Sit down and turn your back. And so we did this thing, and because I knew that there were clouds coming in, and we got this shot. And as soon as I did this shot, I was like, oh, yeah, I know how to take the images of women because I'm a woman. You know, I know how to tell a story, our story through bodies. And so I knew that what she was doing and right at this point is that she was leaving her marriage. And it took a hell of a lot of backbone to do that. It takes a hell of a lot of backbone and courage and strength. And so when we captured that, I thought, that's how I'm going to move forward, is that I'm going to be moving forward thinking of the women's bodies as telling our story. The stuff that keeps me up at night, in that book, you'll see it's in there. Things that bug me as a special education teacher, it's in there. There's a really controversial image I took of fetal alcohol syndrome and drug affected. Really a weird picture, but I wasn't going to put it in there. And then my editor, who did the internal, all the layout and things like that, says, you got to put it in, you know. So that's why that's in there. But yes, I used the women's not as a sexual object in how I photographed them. I wasn't trying to create a romance, maybe a little bit, but because that's part of our story. You know? And so, but mostly I wanted to have more symbolism about bigger picture issues around women. Thank you for that question.
Hi. First of all, just a quick demographic question. How big is Peterson, and these 42 women constituted what portion of the population?
Yeah. Usually we have about I would say now in 2024. Back when I did the original thing, there was maybe close to 2,000 year-round, but then when the canneries and the commercial fishing kicked in, it would swell to 3,000. But last I heard, there's a population of 3,000. The town has expanded, but it's still really swells up, it almost doubles in size when all the cannery workers come to town in the summer. And they're usually there from March until, the beginning of October. That's when the season pretty much ends.
How did this project change you as an artist, photographer, ongoing? Was it, I assume, a major impact to you as you evolved?
Hell yeah. Wow. When I first was taking the images, I've been doing photography for a long time, since I was a kid. When I was 16, my dad gave me a camera, and I couldn't believe it. But I remember when I was at camp, like when I was about maybe 9, 12, and I remember laying on in the middle of the day, and I was laying on my sleeping bag taking a nap, and I was watching all these kids in the background, and I started framing everybody in. And that was when I made the decision I wanted to be a filmmaker or a photographer. I made a decision laying on my side that way. And I think what I was really attracted to is just like my personal life growing up, and it probably is reflected in the photographs, right? It was traumatic. It was chaotic. And so to be able to frame things in, it just gave me some control. And it also made me aware of how beautiful the world is. And how beautiful people are. And so the way that it changed me, I think, from the 1998 up to 2022 was just that the technology changed. That really was a huge lift, because I was so attuned to my Hasselblad, 2 1/4. I had 2 magazines on the back, black and white Ilford, gorgeous film, and I knew how that baby worked, right? Instinctively. I had my spot meter. I knew exactly what I was doing. And also I only had 12 frames on each of those magazines. So every shot was really spot on. And so now, when I came back to it, I had to buy a new camera. Because my Hasselblad, my magazines were, I try and wind them, and they were all sticky because the rubber had started to pull apart. The other thing that happened is that the images, if my friend had not come in 2023 and said, you should do something with it, the negatives would have probably dissolved. The silver started to crystallize when I pulled them out. I was like, holy crap. And so I quickly just spent a month every day after work just scanning into Lightroom as high resolution as I possibly could. And then I had to go back through a whole other month of just cleaning up where the silver had started to crystallize and particulate and separate. I just got to those negatives just in the nick of time. Some of the negatives I just couldn't use because the changes I would have to make from the silver was just too, it just ruined the picture. So yeah, that was the biggest change. And then that first photo shoot I took with a digital Hasselblad was like scary. I was like, oh God, I hope this works. All these women are out there naked, and the images all worked out. But then how I changed as a photographer, I really changed because I had listened so much that the images were very narrative. They were very much about being a 6-year-old woman, approaching the female form. I just approached it differently. And yeah, golly, that's a great question. I guess I have more to say, but hit me up later.
Hi, my name's Mark.
Hi, Mark.
The nude form's been used in art for a very, very long time. And your subjects, women, can oftentimes be focused on their clothed appearance, their cosmetic appearance. What drove your choice to use nudes in your compositions?
Mm-hmm. Well, just sort of what I mentioned, I just decided to use the nude from the get-go to push back against this. So I had group nude, which to diffuse the issues and the gossip and the backlash we were having in town. So that's how the nude started. But it really wasn't until I started to realize that I could tell a story. I could tell a larger story about women symbolically that isn't about the male gaze. It isn't about the clothes. It isn't about anything like that. It's about telling the story of women through just using the figure form. What's interesting, when I did come back, coming back a little bit to where you're saying, when I did come back in 2024, some of the 11 women that showed up were young, and they were very influenced by social media and how women had been portrayed in social media. So when we actually got out there in that photo shoot, if you look at the book, you'll see the picture the group shot. They're a little male-gazy posers. You know, they were kind of like, eh, and some of the older women were not digging it at all. And so, but you had to just let them work it out. Work it out. And you're with all these older women in their 70s who are just raw and real and there. Let them be your mentors moving forward. And look how beautiful they are, you know? And so that softened up a lot over time. But at first, yeah, it was a little bit. I also gave the women the opportunity in 2024 to choose, especially for some of the women who I knew had had dramatic surgeries and things like that, or just uncomfortable, to have the choice to cover up. And so they could come with as much coverage as they wanted. And I made sure that all the images also had options around that too. But yeah, some of my, and then so what happened is like a lot of those 11 young women end up being really powerful. I would say they were fierce, because they're the ones that are coming up against growing up where they're losing autonomy. And like the one woman was saying, you know, just to be able to have a place where I can speak and be powerful and be heard is like so frustrating not to have that. To be sitting at a table and to be invisible, you know, at work, especially when, yeah, anyway, I could go down that loud. But anyway, you know, it's tough. You're pushing up against patriarchy. Yeah.
Hi, this is a follow-up to what you've just said, and I think you may have answered my question, which is, given that these women wanted secrecy, essentially, about these photo shoots, what other cultural effects were there in the town of Peterson amongst the population at large that you were able to view after over a period of years? Were there any, or was the secrecy so complete that life just kind of went on as usual without any ongoing effects from these photo shoots? Did the question make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think the key is secrecy. It really wasn't secret. People knew we were there. I mean, everybody knew the women were coming, the bugle call, right? And so everybody knew, but they all respected privacy. That's the best way to describe it. And so the library set up all this rice paper and just made it private for the women to come in and deal privately with how do they want to move forward in 2024 on these really vulnerable images of themselves. Yeah.
I feel so lucky that I get to ask a second question.
Okay.
You guys don't even know how I feel. So, do you think that in this, and I try and bring it back to where we are right now in this country, do you think there's almost a need or a demand for doing something like this for women in America, anywhere? Could be Midwest, could be here, could be anywhere, to be able to reclaim their power that's being demolished. Something like this would help get the voices out, get their, reclaim the control over what their bodies look like and what they do with their bodies. So do you think there's a need right now for a project like this in this country?
Yes. I don't think the timing is right. And my job is to keep everybody safe.
Hi, Debbie Robinson here. I'm drawn to your title because women endure.
That's for sure.
We endure. And our power has always been there. And it's why some men are so afraid. But to me, you're showing an unfurling of women who will be silent no more, and without even a word, they take their stand. I'm here, I am part of this, and I am part of what makes the world beautiful. I will not be erased. And so I do hope that you have another project and that women will feel safe to say, don't minimize me, don't define me, I am sovereign. So I would encourage you to think about your next step, and I know I would do anything to support you.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. Well, I encourage all you women in Salem to encourage me to do one. And men encouraging women too, absolutely. Look at you guys. This is exactly what happened in Petersburg. I want to say one more thing. No, I want you to go. I have it written down, I'll remember.
It was just a question to kind of follow up on what Nellie asked. You're going to Chicago. Excuse me. And you're going to have some kind of a presentation there at a book fair or something?
Well, there'll be a launch and an exhibition, and there's also the panel forum, public forum, and 9 women from the photo sessions will be there on the forum.
So I think in some ways that exposure, if not meant regarding the photographs, but the idea of women empowerment is being processed and is going out. The word is going out in some way, shape, and form. And you said that you've done some small snippets in other places. Beyond Chicago, is there anything more planned?
I don't have anything else planned right now. We are doing, Maddie and I really had a good conversation about it, and we decided to do a soft rollout because we're learning how to be publishers, and we're also, in a safe way, but also we are just paying attention to the climate, and it's our job to keep everybody safe. And so right now I have my book designer who did the cover and the interior is out of England. And so she is really pushing on me to move beyond the soft rollout that Maddie and I feel really comfortable with right now, just as we're trying to figure things out. We also do self-fulfillment in our studio. We have a studio in the Gray Building on the corner, and you'll see my sign, Summer Street Media, Backbone, LOC, and that's our studio up there. And we have all the books up there, so we're doing all of our self-fulfillment and learning the ropes of the business aspects around it. So that's the only thing I have really planned right now. I don't have anything beyond that. I did submit to different bookstores, but the bookstores, they get so much fodder. They're just tossing things left and right. Then one thing that we're really interested in doing is that we filmed the 2024 photo shoots, like 2 different photo shoots. Is that right? And then and some other things. And so I would love to do a documentary at some point, and if I did a documentary, that would really blow it out. So that's something that I need to do, and I'm still wrapping my head around it all, and yeah, just sort of making sense. I do want to go back to. Does somebody else have something? Because otherwise, I'm going to roll back. I want to go back to something that was said over here about women not realizing that they have power. We don't know that. So many women, especially when we unite, oh man, it's like women have no idea how much power we have. Men do. And so we see it in the systems, right? We're held down by systems. We're held down by all kinds of different things. And I also have noticed that women compete with each other. So yes, we can say it's a patriarchy thing and all that stuff. Women have a responsibility. We have a big responsibility to each other. We got to quit the competition BS. And we need to support each other. We need to unite and come together in common cause. Because what happens is that we've been trained, the level of power that's available to us is just like the slightest little sliver in that power pie. And if we get in there, it's like we think we've made it, but we aren't listened to at the boardroom. You know, they don't care. They're just token. But we beat each other up trying to get into that pie, you know? And it's just, there's a joke that I remember a Lincoln woman told me about. We were talking about this. She says that there's this joke, and it's usually around crab fishermen. So there's two native crab fishermen were out in the crab fishing along the beach shore, and one of them looks into the bucket of crab, and he goes, "Oh, those are native crab." And the guy says, "Oh, how do you know that?" He says, "Because they're pulling each other down." And that could be applied to women. We pull each other down, because we don't fit the right mold, or we get jealous. I don't know what it is. I'm going down a rabbit hole on that. But we are victims of the culture of patriarchy. We keep it in place by not realizing that we have power and we don't come together. And it's good, it's beautiful for the men. I can guarantee for men to see women rise, and when women rise, we can shift culture. And we can shift culture for the betterment of the whole damn community and the nation and humanity. But we just have to decide to do that and bring our men with us, right? Our brothers. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but far. I'm going far.
And we're with you. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you. You guys. Hey, you guys are a great audience. I had no idea what I was going to expect. But I just wanted to tell you that this was my shakedown, and you were there.